A ton of you asked me to talk about this recent Bari Weiss appearance on CNN. Bari Weiss was a reporter for the New York Times and left under circumstances where she claimed that her views basically weren't welcome. She was ostracized. She was made to feel uncomfortable. So she went and launched a Substack, and she appeared on CNN with Brian Stelter. We're going to look at the clip. Now, I want to mention, I am no fan of Brian Stelter. Like, Brian Stelter is very controversial in like media, right-wing media circles. A lot of people don't like him. I don't really care about Brian Stelter. He said some things that I agree with, and sometimes he's kind of wacky. Whatever. This is not an adjudication of Brian Stelter. Bari Weiss, sometimes she says things that I find sensible, and sometimes she makes no sense. But this clip is being made out to be sort of like this incredible takedown of the media establishment by Bari Weiss for the things that people aren't allowed to talk about. My perspective, and I'll tell you up front, rather than saving it for the end, my perspective on this is that it is the exact type of hyperbole about so-called cancel culture and censorship that really is barely going on. And a lot of right wingers love this. I think it's all pretty dumb. Let's just jump right into it and take a listen.
You're right. There are tens of millions of Americans who aren't on the hard left or the hard right who feel the world has gone mad. So in what ways has the world gone mad?
Well, when you have the chief reporter on the beat of COVID for the New York Times talking about how questioning or pursuing the question of the lab leak is racist, the world has gone mad.
Okay, now, I agree with her there. Investigating whether something came from a certain country, absent anything else, is not inherently racist. It was used to justify, and it fueled xenophobia against Asian Americans. But simply saying, did this come from a lab in China? That is not inherently racist. That I agree with.
When you're not able to say out loud and in public that there are differences between men and women, the world has gone mad.
That's absurd. You can find some places where, I guess someone might be saying there are no differences between men and women. I've still not seen that. And I know that the right loves to talk about that when they say, it's not that we hate trans people. It's that you're not even allowed to say there's a difference between men and women. I've just not seen that. I've seen no evidence that that's the case.
When we're not allowed to acknowledge that rioting is rioting and it is bad.
Again, when we saw, by the way, rioting, the real riots were January 6th. And many of the people claiming that police brutality protests were riots won't call what happened on the 6th a riot. Like, put that hypocrisy aside. The left that I'm a part of and that I see says destruction of property and violence as part of protests is bad. Who's not allowed to say that?
And that silence is not violence, but violence is violence. The world has gone mad. When we're not able to say that Hunter Biden's laptop is a story worth pursuing, the world has gone mad.
The story has been pursued. The story has she seems now to be taking issue with the fact that many media outlets looked at the story and said it just doesn't meet the evidentiary rigor for us to publish it.
When in the name of progress, young school children, as young as kindergarten, are being separated in public schools because of their race.
Now that I don't even know what she's talking about. I looked into that. I just couldn't find that. I don't know what she's talking about with that one.
And that is called progress rather than segregation. The world has gone mad. There are dozens of examples that I could share with you and with your viewers.
And you often say,
everyone
allowed.
Sort of knows this. And
you say we're not allowed, we're not able.
between...
Who's the people stopping the conversation? Who are they?
People that work at networks, frankly, like the one I'm speaking on right now, who try and claim that, it was racist to investigate the lab leak theory. It was.
Who
let's
said
just
that
take
at
an
CNN?
example.
Right. She's repeating. She had one example from one person at the New York Times. Almost no one is saying that. That's not a predominant opinion anywhere.
I'm just saying that when you say allowed, I just think it's a provocative thing you say. You say we're not allowed to talk about these things, but they're all over the internet. I can Google them. I can find them everywhere. I've heard about every story you mentioned.
Course.
So I'm just suggesting, of course, people are allowed to cover whatever they want to cover.
But you and I both know, and it would be delusional to claim otherwise, that touching your finger to an increasing number of subjects that have been deemed third rail by the mainstream institutions and increasingly by some of the tech companies will lead to reputational damage, perhaps you losing your job, your children sometimes being demonized as well.
Now it starts to get like very, very outrageous.
So what happens is a kind of internal self-censorship.
So now she shifts to, well, it's not actually that no one's allowed to talk about it. It's that people are self-censoring. Now, does self-censorship exist in some cases? Sure. I've talked about how I've self-censored in some cases. But this is very similar to when, the big thing was, the left is just overrun with identity politics. But no, at the time it was like, yeah, identity politics in the Women's March got a little toxic and saying Jewish women aren't intersectional enough to be part of that was going on. But by and large, the left at that time was concerned with economic issues and environment and the start of the pandemic and all these different things. This is always the idea. They exaggerate it and they say, this is an epidemic. This is crazy. And then when you say, well, so who's not allowed to talk about? Well, you're allowed, but you might suffer reputational damage or people are self-censoring or whatever the case may be. But then with a lot of these examples, it's literally one example. And the issue of the origins of COVID, it's been looked at everywhere. We've talked about it. We didn't shy away. A lot of other, colleagues on the left have looked at it. What she wants, fundamentally what she wants. There are so many people that think she really crushed CNN and the media establishment there. All she did was argue for freedom from the consequences of speech. And a lot of these people that are sort of these anti-wokeist, free speech, no matter what type people, often what they really want is freedom from the consequences of speech. And no one gets that. And when they say we're not allowed to talk about, they're often talking about those things on TV shows with global audiences, and no one is restricting their ability to talk about that. She was on CNN talking about how on CNN you can't talk about any of these things. No one's talking over her. No one's kicking her off. They're things that CNN has talked about. Now, to the extent that she makes okay points, like she was right. There was that New York Times reporter and some, little bit of blip about it's racist to say the virus might have come from China. No, it's not fundamentally racist. It is racist to then take that and attack Asian Americans and discriminate against Asian people, right? But the entire thing seems sort of unhinged, and she seems to conflate being allowed to talk about things with having to take debunked stories seriously and giving them more and more and more and more airtime, or the freedom from the consequences of your speech. You just don't get that. Nobody gets that. I don't get that. Nobody gets that. Consequences to speech is part of free speech. So for me, this was not a particularly titillating clip at all. And it certainly was not the takedown that many on the right made it out to be. One of our sponsors is Cometeer Coffee, the world's first frozen coffee. I've been very impressed with the coffee I've had from Cometeer. Cometeer sources their beans from some of the world's best locally owned specialty roasters. And the Cometeer team has developed their own way of protecting the freshness and aroma of the coffee by taking its concentrated liquid form and flash freezing it so it keeps those original flavors and nuances. Cometeer comes to you frozen. You just add hot water. Or for iced coffee, you just melt it. You can use it to make a ton of different hot and cold coffee drinks. The way they lock in the flavor like this, you really can taste it. It tastes fresh. I've been getting a ton of enjoyment out of Cometeer. They've got a great variety of coffees. It's delicious. The way you make it is super convenient. And you'll get $20 off when you go to cometeer.com/Pacman. The link is underneath this video.